making headlines tonight. A new era, Hambantota port becomes operational.
The world's largest and emptiest swimming pool can now become a world-class port.
China Merchants Port Holdings optimistic about profits.
So Hambantota port will have to take a little bit long time to make it profitable.
Over the line, Finance Minister Mangala's maiden budget passes the third reading. The joint opposition and the JVP vote against. It's not that easy. Minister Sagala Ratnayaka illustrates challenges faced by law enforcement sector.
That some of the major financial crimes under probe were meticulously planned.
In headlines overseas, end of a struggle, Iraq declares war with IS is over. Russia doping saga, Putin decides not to stand in the way of Russian athletes wanting to compete independently at the Winter Olympics. Bringing you news from across Sri Lanka and around the world on Other Derana 24/7. I'm Indira Yamuatha. We start off with your top story tonight. The Hambantota port was handed over to two private corporations, Hambantota International Port Group and Hambantota International Port Services Company Private Limited today. The official event took place at the Parliamentary Complex under the patronage of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe.
The concession agreement on the Hambantota port, signed by the Government of Sri Lanka and the Sri Lanka Ports Authority with China Merchants Port Holdings on the 29th of July, comes into effect from today. Under the agreement, which is a public-private partnership, the port is handed over to two private corporations, Hambantota International Port Group and Hambantota International Port Services Company Private Limited. Under the development and operation of the port, $1.1 billion in investment value will be paid to the Sri Lankan government by China Merchants Port Holdings, 30% of which was paid today at the event held to officially implement the concession agreement. The initial payment amounted to $292 million. Speaking at the event, Executive Vice Chairman of China Merchants Group Limited, Dr. Hu Jianhua, discussed possible challenges the project may face.
You have already spent over $1.4 billion heavy investment in Hambantota port. However, such a heavy investment deviates a little bit from real market demand. Hence, the challenge is also very heavy too. So Hambantota port will have to take a little bit long time to make it profitable. Hambantota port is the second port which we devote ourselves for a century time, 100 years, to cooperate with you. Furthermore, human resource and opportunities for local talent play an important role in our company culture. We are very delighted to see the fast-growing local workforce in China Merchants Port, and I have no doubt that this project will provide significant employment opportunities.
Addressing the gathering, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said the Hambantota port will play a leading role as the Indian Ocean continues to rise in importance.
Indian Ocean is going to be the growth region of the world in the next few decades. And the Hambantota port adds on to our concept of Sri Lanka, the hub of the Indian Ocean. This repositions us, as in the old days, to capture the trade in the area. This port is also linked to the objective of One Belt, One Road, which have been proposed by President Xi. So we have looked at the future. We will also be having a large number of industrial estates for which land is being identified. A new organization, the Ruhuna Economic Development Corporation, is being established to see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of factories coming in. But it means infrastructure development. Already discussions are underway on an oil refinery, dockyard, on a cement plant, on a steel billet plant, among others. So we can see the revival of the economy of Ruhuna.
In the meantime, parents of employees of the Hambantota Magampura port continued their satyagraha in front of the Hambantota Port Authority for a 19th day, demanding that employees who had worked under the Magampura Port Management Company be provided further employment opportunities. Another group of parents meanwhile engaged in a protest in Ambalantota. Addressing a media briefing, former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Dr. Nalaka Godaheva, expressed his views on the Hambantota Port Agreement.
If the port was developed as planned, we could have paid off the debt by 2025. If the government was in charge, the port would have been developed under the government's plan in a manner suitable for the country and the economy. That won't happen when the port is given to a Chinese company. They develop it as they wish so they can gain profits. They have no idea as to what industries are suitable for this country. Our youth will have to become slaves of foreign corporations.
Minister of Finance Mangala Samaraveera meanwhile commented on the economic benefits the country can derive from the latest investment.
The world's largest and emptiest swimming pool can now become a world-class port, bringing prosperity and development to the country, especially to the south. The joint venture PPP partnership with China Merchant Port Holdings will enable Hambantota Port to benefit from the broader trade and shipping network that CMPH will provide access to. CMPH has operated successful models of similar industrial ports in Asia and Africa, and this proven track record gives us confidence that the partnership will result in vessel traffic and industrial investment, enabling the Hambantota Port to finally generate the cash flows to make it a viable investment.
And the third reading of the 2018 budget passed in Parliament with a two-thirds majority this evening. 155 parliamentarians voted for it, while 56 voted against.
The 2018 budget is founded on the themes of a blue-green budget and on the theme of Enterprise Sri Lanka. This is a budget to harness Sri Lanka's marine and natural resources in a sustainable manner, whilst unleashing the true potential of our greatest resources, our people. Young entrepreneurs have been unable to access affordable finance to bring to life their business ideas. As a result, our youth have become accustomed to waiting for the government to provide them with some relief, be it a government job or some form of concession or handout. The budget focuses on liberalization to unlock the barriers to greater investment, trade and start-up enterprises. We envisage the day when the farmer's daughter becomes an agribusiness entrepreneur, when the fisherman's son becomes a seafood exporter. Sri Lanka needs to go back to its roots of being a nation of entrepreneurs, a nation of traders. To do this, we must be open to global trade, embrace competition and take on the world and win. Present, 5 Sri Lankan companies control the agencies of shipping lines that account for 74% of the global shipping market. Whilst these companies have opposed liberalization of the sector, Sri Lanka Apparel Exporters, the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka, and the Sri Lanka Export Association have all hailed the move to liberalize the shipping industry, since it enables more competitive pricing and better services to the entire export industry. Do we want to undermine the interests of thousands of export companies and hundreds of thousands of their employees to serve the interests of a handful of entrenched shipping agency companies? We will ensure that such competition will be fair and balanced, eliminating unfair trade practices by enacting prudent regulation. This is why the proposal on shipping liberalization is coupled with the proposals to implement an independent regulator for the industry.
ආයවැලේකට පක්ෂව ඡන්ද 154 ලෙස අමතර එක 155යි විරුද්ධව ඡන්ද 56යි ඡන්දය නොදී සංඛාව 0යි. ඒ අනුව තුන්වෙනි කීම සම්මතයි.
The Tamil National Alliance cast their vote for the budget proposal 2018 along with the parliamentarians representing the government, while members of the joint opposition and JVP cast their votes against the budget. Meanwhile, the parliamentary debate on expenditure of the Minister of Finance and Mass Media was conducted today.
Back then, it cost $4.5 billion annually just to import crude oil. Now it only costs about 2.8 or 2.5 billion US. We were able to save more than $5 billion. What happened to that money? If we had that, then we won't have to sell off the Hambantota port because it was $1.1 billion, or the Mattala airport, which will be sold off for 26 billion rupees. There won't be any kind of an economic crisis if we didn't make these kinds of stupid decisions. It would be a good deed if you can include the report by the International Monetary Fund on Sri Lanka into the Hansard. Any citizen of the country can look up the report on the internet. For the first time in the country's history, the primary balance was 45 billion rupees by 2017. What are the taxes you will be receiving from the Hambantota port? Company profits will not be taxed for 32 years. Dividends will be free of tax for 26 years. Tax on nation building will also be freed. I'd like to know if there are any more taxes other than these. Our treasury won't get any tax from this port for decades. So the finance ministry must let this parliament know as to what other taxes we are talking about here. No one tries to run before they learn how to crawl. The process of running takes time. They spent $810 million even before they got any profit for the first $450 million. And the country couldn't make any profit for both of these amounts. So we had to pay off all this debt. We can't simply materialize dollars.
Minister of Law and Order Sagar Ratnayaka said Sri Lanka must collaborate with international law enforcement agencies in order to crack down on offshore crimes and to strengthen the national fight against corruption. Delivering an address via Facebook to mark the United Nations Anti-Corruption Day, the minister went on to say that the law enforcement agencies in Sri Lanka have produced satisfactory results despite being faced with various challenges.
It is important to understand that some of the major financial crimes under probe were meticulously planned and carefully executed. It requires a lot of time and hard work to trace evidence, analyze them, and bring the perpetrators to book. There are areas where our investigators lack expertise and they have to seek the assistance of outside parties, sometimes foreign experts. There are areas where the crimes have taken cross-border. We need the assistance of foreign governments to be able to go into those countries or to get the investigators in those countries or the agencies in those countries to investigate and assist us by providing us the details.
The minister went on to say that Financial Crimes Investigations Division has received 370 cases, of which 73 have been forwarded to other agencies or divisions within police for investigations. He also said that the FCID has so far concluded 93 investigations, which are sent to the Attorney General's Department for advice on how to proceed with legal actions.
We are aware that the Attorney General's Department too is facing issues on the human capital front. The government has also taken measures to recruit more state counsel to the Attorney General's Department to expedite legal action. We are determined to overcome the challenges and move fast on prosecution while setting the right systems in place so that there won't be any room for bribery, corruption, and financial misappropriation.
Minister of Health Dr. Rajitha Senaratne today revealed that government has increased spending for cancer treatment by over 3.5 billion rupees from 1.3 billion rupees earlier to 4.8 billion rupees at present. Health Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne also revealed today that the government's plan to set up a state-of-the-art cancer treatment hospital in Colombo will enable the country's fight against the disease.
The 12th International Cancer Conference of the SAARC Federation of Oncologists was held under the patronage of Minister of Health Dr. Rajitha Senaratne. The event was held in conjunction with annual academic sessions of Sri Lanka College of Oncologists. In Sri Lanka, over 20,000 new cancer patients are detected annually. Health officials have identified smoking to be the main cause of cancer among males and therefore imposed tougher regulations on cigarette companies. The tax on tobacco was also increased, which comes to be the highest in the world.
We have to be proud that in spite of budgetary constraints, our healthcare system has continued to provide free medical care for all cancer patients, including chemotherapy, targeted therapy, radiotherapy, palliative care and supportive care. And when I assumed duties, I saw there was only allocation of 1.5 million per cancer patients. So when I asked my Director Generals, what happened to the patient after 1.5 million you spend for a patient? Nobody answered. then is the death sentence for the patient. So now we have extended that for lifetime all the cancer patients. We are now in the process of further strengthening the relevant schemes by allocating resources not only to improve infrastructure but also to improve human resources and research facilities at all levels. I am pleased to learn that we have over 50 consultant oncologists in the country, but I believe we should have double this number. Now we have planned to set up a state-of-the-art specialized hospital in Colombo, where we want to introduce even proton therapy, the latest in oncology treatment.
The government will consider all employees of the railway services who fail to report for duty to have vacated their positions. This was acknowledged today by the Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation, Nimal Siripal de Silva. This comes in a backdrop where President Maithripala Sirisena signed a gazette yesterday making railway services an essential service of the country. The strike launched by employees of the railway trade unions continued for a third day today.
Trade unions of railway services launched a strike 3 days ago, demanding that the cabinet paper on rectifying their salary anomalies be approved immediately. Although yesterday's discussions with the President's secretary yielded solutions to locomotive operating engineers, the salary issues of the rest did not receive a solution and the strike continued. Meanwhile, the gazette signed by the President last evening, making railway services an essential service, was issued today. With approximately 300 train journeys being cancelled today, Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation, Nimal Siripal de Silva, declared that those who failed to report to duty will be considered to have vacated their positions. It was not only the Sri Lankan public who were affected, but foreigners too had a tough time with the strike.
People who are striking also need to understand there are tourists. You cannot strike and then your economy gets affected. Because we don't have this information, we don't have the news, we're tourists. Thank you.
I agree to all that. It's a very bad system, this is. Very bad.
Today marked the maiden signing of nomination papers of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna for the upcoming local government elections. Nomination papers were inked at the official residence of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa in Colombo.
The first group of contestants of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna inked the nomination papers at an auspicious time before former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. They are contesting the Pradesha Sabha of Galneva in Anuradhapura.
We will win for sure. People of this country have issues from all sides. The assets of the country are sold. The port doesn't belong to the Hambantota district but belongs to the citizens of this country. But they lied and sold it. No, we held discussions over some matters. If we move for an agreement with any party that's a part of the United National Party government, we too become a part of the UNP government. We asked them to leave the government because we didn't want to be a part of it. If they leave the government, we have no issues with working with the president. We're ready to forget everything else.
In such a backdrop, Padula District Secretariat was seen getting ready for the local government elections. In the meantime, various political representatives expressed views on the upcoming local government elections.
Discussions are halted at present. If we need to join, we can have discussions with the SLFP members in the government. Don't wait until the leaders get together because they could either unite or not. Therefore, there should be unity in the villages. These days, politicians are trying to win local governments and other entities. We are trying to win the world.
Meanwhile, the National Freedom Front is willing to enter into an alliance with any leader who will defeat the new constitutional process. Deputy Leader of the party, Jayantha Samaravira, made the remark at a media briefing today whilst describing the constitutional process as separatist.
The leader of the National Freedom Front was offered privileges by various parties, but they couldn't change his mind. That's why he was reproached continuously. His beloved wife was arrested and remanded. Although they hatched a number of plans to hold the journey, they couldn't do that. Therefore, they are now trying to poach our members and try to halt our journey. We need agreements. If someone is trying to put an end to this federal constitution, we will join them. If anyone is ready to stop EDCA, we agree with them. Otherwise, we're not ready to have agreements with anyone for elections.
Former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa alleges that the reason behind the failure of the present government is the fact that it did not make use of talented individuals. He made the remark addressing an event held in Narahempita today.
The launch of the book titled Singharaja, authored by Dr. Mahinda Wickremarachi, was held today at the Abhayarama temple in Narahempita. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa also took part in the event.
Were literary masterpieces created in ancient times because of the freedom of media and expression? All I saw under media freedom was the creation of defamatory websites such as e-news. This country needs a practical leadership with positive thinking. In the recent past, while seeking this leadership, we observed that a leader needs to encourage those under him and journey with them. When I was the Defence Secretary, my main aim was to engage talented individuals. I saw how much we could accomplish that way. This government has failed because it undermines emerging strength. When that happens, no ideas are put forward and no one comes forth to take on tasks. That's the change that has happened today.
And the grand finale of Derana Dream Star Season 7 kicked off tonight at the Sugadasa Indoor Stadium. Sunira Sumanga, Mahesha Sandamali and Shaleen Kaushalya are contesting for the coveted title The Dream Star 2017. Apart from performances by contestants, the show features performances from past contenders as well as winners and reputed artists. The live telecast of the show commenced at 7:30 this evening on TV Derana, and the ultimate champion will be decided through SMS votes of viewers. We'll take a look at a few other stories making news from across the country now.
IGP Pujit Jayasundara has temporarily suspended all annual transfers of police officers. Issuing a notice, the IGP cites the upcoming local government election as the cause for the measure. Accordingly, police officers will not be subject to transfers until the 15th of February next year. A Dhamma sermon to invoke blessings on the recently killed tusker, commonly known as Galgamuwe Dalaputtua, was worked off today. The tusker was found killed adjacent to the lake Siambalaweva in Galgamuwe. Meanwhile, another tusker fell victim to an illegal power line in Muriyakadawala, Thirappani. It was electrocuted. Kottiyagala in Siambalanduwa received black rain yesterday. The other Derana correspondent said that the people in the area suspect toxins in the rainwater.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Well, Central Bank is calling for bids for treasury bills worth 17,500 million rupees through an auction that will be held on Wednesday, the 13th of this month. The treasury bills with a maturity period of 6 months and 1 year will be accepted. The bids will be accepted until 11 a.m. on the 13th of this month. Bids are invited from primary dealers and government securities. Bitcoin lost almost a fifth of its value in 10 hours yesterday, having surged more than 40% in the preceding 48 hours. It sparked fears that the market may be heading for a price collapse.
In a hectic day on Thursday, Bitcoin leapt from below €16,000 to €19,500 in less than an hour on the US-based GDAX, one of the biggest global exchanges, while it was still changing hands at about €15,900 on the Luxembourg-based Bitstamp. Some market watchers attributed the lurch higher to the coming launch of Bitcoin futures on major exchanges. Having then climbed to €16,666 on Bitstamp at around 2 GMT yesterday, it tumbled to €13,482 by around 12 GMT, a slide of more than 19%. It was last down 8.2% at around €15,232 on Bitstamp. Since the start of October, Bitcoin has more than tripled in price. So far this year, it has soared to about 15-fold, stoking concerns that the bubble would burst in dramatic fashion. Its rapid rise has drawn in millions of new investors.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
And in international news, Iraq has announced that its war against so-called Islamic State is over. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi told a conference in Baghdad that Iraqi troops were now in complete control of the Iraqi-Syrian border. The border zone contained the last few areas held by IS following its loss of the town of Rawah last month. In 2014, the jihadist group had seized vast areas of Syria and Iraq when it proclaimed a caliphate and imposed its rule over some 10 million people. It, however, suffered a series of defeats over the past 2 years, losing Iraq's second city, Mosul, this July, and its de facto capital, Raqqa, in northern Syria last month. Some IS fighters are reported to have dispersed into the Syrian countryside, while others are believed to have escaped across the Turkish border. Day of rage protests over the U.S. decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel were held across the occupied West Bank, East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip in Palestine. At least 2 Palestinians were killed and hundreds were injured in clashes with Israeli troops yesterday.
The Red Crescent yesterday said that so far they had attended to at least 767 injuries in the occupied West Bank, East Jerusalem and Gaza Strip. Israel's military said its aircraft bombed Hamas militant targets in Gaza yesterday in response to rockets fired earlier from Gaza at Israeli towns. The Palestinian Health Ministry said at least 25 people were wounded in the strikes, including 6 children. Meanwhile, protests against the U.S. decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital took place in countries including Greece, Turkey and the U.S. Palestinian UN observer Riyad Mansour said the decision must be reconsidered and rescinded.
Complicity must be recognized. The U.S. decision to reward Israelis' impunity undermines and essentially disqualifies its leadership role to seek peace in the region.
Still in international news, U.S. President Donald Trump voiced support for Roy Moore, the Alabama Republican Senate candidate, dogged by accusations of sexual misconduct during a rally that foreshadowed themes for next year's midterm elections. Speaking to a stadium of supporters in Florida yesterday near the Alabama state line, Trump also touted his work on trade deals while calling on Democrats to support a measure that would avert a government shutdown.
Guys screaming, we want Roy Moore. He's right. Democrats in Congress want open borders, higher taxes, and government-run health care that doesn't work, costs a fortune. That's why we need a Republican in the House. We need a Republican in the Senate. We want people that are going to protect your gun rights. Great trade deals instead of the horrible deals. And we want jobs, jobs, jobs. So get out and vote for Roy Moore.
The race in the heavily Republican state of Alabama heated up last month with accusations that Republican candidate Roy Moore sexually assaulted or behaved inappropriately with several women when they were teenagers. Moore denies the allegations and Trump formally endorsed him on Monday.
You are watching Sri Lanka's trusted news brand, Derana 24/7.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says Russia would not prevent its athletes from competing at the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics if they wanted to, damping down calls from some Russians for a boycott of the Games. The IOC on Tuesday banned the Russian team from the Olympics after evidence emerged of an unprecedented systematic manipulation of the anti-doping system.
Despite banning Russia from the Winter Games, the IOC, however, left the door open for some Russians to compete as neutrals if they demonstrate they have a doping-free background. In his first comments since the ban, Putin said that Russia bore a share of the blame for the IOC decision for having given international Olympic authorities a pretext for banning the country.
For the athletes, it is very important, so due to this idea, we will not prohibit anything to anyone. We will not block anything or create conditions that would make their participation impossible. A question arises. Why are our Olympians being banned from competing under the Russian flag and national symbols if there is no state support for doping? Then punish those who are guilty. Second, if there is no state support of doping, why cannot they perform with our national symbols? That is also a question.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Good evening and welcome to Forecast First. Now tomorrow's temperatures will average at around 28 degrees Celsius in coastal areas and 23 degrees in the central hills. Now a slight low pressure zone can be expected in the southeast of the island. Mainly fair weather will prevail over most parts of the island. However, showers are possible in Jaffna, Vaunia and Putlam. Going southwards, thunder showers may occur in Kandy and Batticaloa, along with showers in Negombo, Mathura and Hambantota. It's time now for the City by City forecast.
That's all from us here tonight. Do join us on Facebook and Twitter via First at 9. And before we go, as usual, we'd like to take you to Lyon in France, where tens of thousands of people gathered to witness the city's famous Festival of Lights.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.